Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 180. I figured I had enough to talk about this week, and I don't know how long. I'm always like, there should be a bingo card for this show. There should be a bingo card for this show, and one of them should be, I don't think I have a lot to talk about this week. So scratch that off on your bingo card. I'm a very repetitive person. I'm not a very interesting person. You shouldn't listen to this podcast. I spent like 20 minutes before I started recording going around my house to try and fix my internet. Not through my router, which is what I should have done. All I have to do is reset. I have like a combined modem router thing. That's what I should have done. That's what actually fixed it. But what I thought it was electrical interference. I have many complicated solutions to simple problems. One of those is getting Ethernet to my PC. So the way that I do that is not by like running a big cat cable to all the way through my house, so that I can get a wired connection to the internet. The much easier thing, and what I would recommend if you want Ethernet, because it's like more consistent and usually cheaper, is to get this thing called a Powerline adapter. They're kind of crazy. It feels like magic. Essentially what it is it transfers an internet signal through the electrical wiring of your house, and it gives you a wired connection. No, not going through the air like Wi-Fi would, but through the actual wiring of your house. It's like two boxes, these two little boxes that are kind of like the size of a charging adapter you might have for your phone or something like that. You plug one in next to your router and hook it up with an Ethernet cable, your modem. Hook it up with an Ethernet cable, and then you plug the other one in wherever else you want in your house, nearby an open wall socket, and then hook that via Ethernet to your computer, and you pair them, and you can get a wired signal. It's like magic. I initially got it for fighting games because I don't want to be the guy playing on Wi-Fi. This is even before, it has only, Street Fighter 6 is the first fighting game where you can, actually kind of play it on Wi-Fi. 4 years ago, that didn't, oh my god, 4 years ago, even, 5 years ago, not literally until SF6, it was not viable to play fighting games on Wi-Fi. You're going to have a bad experience, or you're going to give your opponent a really bad experience, and people aren't going to want to play with you, which is why you will hear a lot of discussion. It's cooled off more recently because of advancements in, say, rollback, but about, we should just have, that's why there's Wi-Fi indicators for matchmaking. That's why people talk about having the Wi-Fi gulag and just have all the Wi-Fi players against each other. So I initially got it for that, and it turns out that it's actually just a very consistent, I just leave it on all the time, and it's just a consistent internet source, and I don't have to worry about it, and it's very fast. So there is a downside. Every technological thing is going to have some kind of a downside and some kind of a headache related to it. And with something like a Powerline adapter, the technical foibles you can get into are even stranger than with Wi-Fi, or even, I would say, more arcane. And you will be in the misery, kinda, because one of the issues that can arise is that the actual electrical wiring of your house can be causing interference, basically like noise that disrupts the signal from between your adapters. And when I say the electrical wiring. So like my house has old ass 1970s copper wiring. It's not very modern in that regard. And we have an absolute nightmare of plugs and appliances. The electricity situation in my house is not enviable. Like we would have to like strip it all out and redo it. That's like something we would like to do at some point, to remodel it. I've had this issue in the past where it's like suddenly the signal is just really bad or it's really slow. And thankfully, it hasn't been an interference issue or a noise issue. But when looking up people's stories about this, you do get into a situation that's like, I went around my house unplugging every appliance one by one and checking what fixed it. And it was like the coffee machine, the coffee maker in my kitchen fixed, like was causing the disruption. And it can be that minute. And it's like, okay, I just can't plug in the coffee maker, or my Wi-Fi is gonna drop to like a tenth of the speed it should be at. Sorry, not Wi-Fi. My internet in general is gonna drop. So, thankfully, all it required this time was a reset of the modem itself. But there was a minute where I was like, "Fuck, do I have to go through my entire house and troubleshoot this?" Because it wasn't just that it was slow; it wasn't working. And what was weird is that the Wi-Fi on my other devices, like my phone, worked and had no issue. So I thought that it was with the wiring. Thankfully, it wasn't. But that was a little mental journey that I went on. If you want to leave comments, we didn't have any questions last time. But if you'd like to ask any questions, you can leave them down in the comments below, and I'll get to them next time. I want to talk a little bit about some interesting kind of game design stuff that's come up that I've been thinking about. My observations. Because a couple episodes ago, I was talking about it's time for, hey, bingo card stuff. I'm going to talk about Flesh and Blood again. I talked about Flesh and Blood's very unique, one-of-a-kind rotation system, which, if you don't remember, is the Living Legend system, where heroes, it's a hero-based game. Cards do not rotate out of legality, like in many other games, but heroes do. The hero that you base your deck around will rotate out, and that happens when they accrue a certain number of about 1,000 Living Legend points, which are earned by basically getting top placements at actual official events. And there you earn more points depending on the event that you top. I think that the most, if you're going to like the Pro Tour or something and you win the whole thing, you're going to get the most, like 100 points or something, or 200 points, something like that. So when I first talked about it, I thought it was a cool system. And it's a very interesting system, and it has the effect of sort of naturally balancing out the game, because more powerful heroes will leave the game faster, and which means that they won't be terrorizing the game for very long if they do happen to be too strong. But it also means that over time, eventually, even the oldest heroes will eventually accrue enough points to Living Legend. So it has sort of a self-balancing sort of seesaw effect. It also has the very interesting cultural effect within the community, which is that people get really excited when a top-tier hero wins a big event. Like, 3 notable heroes just left the format. One of which was a hero named Zen, who's been like extremely strong, one of the best ninjas they've ever released. And he won some big event, and people were like, yes! Yes! Not because, like, typically when you see a top tier win any event in any game, people kind of groan. They go, well, yeah, But in Fab, It's like, yes, he's gonna leave sooner. He's gonna leave. They're gonna leave the format faster. Yes, they're gonna be gone. So people like grumble for a while. Oh, they're winning everything, and then it turns into hype the closer they get, and it's kind of interesting. Like, people are very positive and they want them to win more. So that's a very unique aspect that I never see people really note, but I find that very funny coming from literally any other game. Well, one of the negatives, I said I can't quite think of the negatives. I can't quite think of the negatives off the top of my head. Well, we discovered one of the negatives very soon after I released that episode, which is just how fast a hero can go to Living Legend. Now, I believe the shortest run that a hero ever had was like 4 or 5 months, something like that. And that streak, that record has still not been broken. And that was from like the set where they developed it during COVID and they couldn't like playtest it as much. And it came out very strong in general, very power creepy. So I believe in November of 2024, last year, they released a set called Rosetta. Now, for the most part, Rosetta has been pretty balanced. I think that like most of the heroes from that are pretty strong. There were 4 heroes. They were all decent. 2 of them I'd say are considered like pretty good. One of them is considered not very weak, or not very strong in general, a little lower on the totem pole. And one of them is named Aurora. Aurora was kind of, you could tell from the outset, was LSS, the creator of the games, favorite. I don't want to say favorite, but you could tell that they kind of knew she was a winner. Aurora was a lightning rune blade, and I'm using past tense, and she, you can tell where this is going. She basically played a very simple, easy to pick up, but very effective rushdown game, where she would chain multiple 0 or 1 cost attack actions back to back to back, and could frequently put up like 14 to 20 damage, or 16 to 20 damage in a single turn. That was very normal for her, of which you'd have to, pick how much of that you want to block out. At the beginning, she was being kept down by a lack of experimentation, and it takes a little bit to develop out a hero and a deck list and stuff like that. Also, there were multiple other very strong heroes in the format. As time wore on, and month after month, a few of them went to Living Legend, and suddenly people start looking at Aurora as a new aggro deck. She had also been pushed by having a pre-con released, a pre-constructed deck. These are kind of like their entry-level on-ramp products that they release for new players to get into the game very, with a convenient way. You just buy the deck, right? Buy the deck and you can start playing. They released these so-called First Strike decks for her and another hero named Terra, who were just for the Blitz format, which is kind of the less popular, kind of faster, lower starting life total format. That was pretty successful from what I understand. And if a new player was getting into the game, it was very easy to point them to the First Strike decks and say, just pick up one of these. Terra's like a slow control deck. Aurora's the fast aggro deck. And, a lot of new players love playing fast aggro strategies because they're very simple to wrap your head around. Aurora especially had tons of just like built-in synergies. One of my friends at the card shop at the local game store, his girlfriend is kind of like, she doesn't own any cards, but obviously because of him, she's aware of the game, and she's stopped by, she's been there a couple nights, and we'll just like hand her like an Aurora deck because she knows how to play and all that. And I played her one time because I think I got like a buy allocation. We had an odd number of players. So I played her on Aurora, and she's like, I just love these cards. They all just work with each other. And she was able to like get a bunch of stuff done and put up a bunch of big numbers and chain a bunch of attacks together. And it's a playstyle that's very popular with newcomers. And all sorts of, and even with, you know, highly competitive players, because she just did it really well. That was kind of sort of the problem. So a few months ago, they release an armory deck for Aurora. Armory decks are the same kind of idea of a pre-constructed deck, but this time armory decks are specifically for, or mainly for, Classic Constructed, the main kind of standard format of the game. And they stated that their idea was they knew how popular Aurora was going to be, and you can imagine whenever anything comes out in a TCG that the decision has been made like at least a year in advance. It's a very slow moving industry. It's not very agile, even at like the indie level where they're at. So the idea was pretty clearly like they knew that she was a winner, and they wanted to create an onboarding process of first you start with the First Strike deck, then you graduate up to the Armory deck. You get all these fun cards to play with and all these synergies and all that. And typically in Armory decks, they tend to print a couple new exclusive cards just in the Armory deck for that hero. Traditionally, they've released Armory decks for heroes that were not very high up on the Living Legend leaderboard. What the people are yelling outside my house. My family's yelling. They have released decks for heroes who are not very far along, like maybe a few hundred points, right? And that's kind of been their way of sort of target buffing. Like there's going to be some new cards. It's going to help them out. Tends to be, you know, for lower tier heroes, right? And recently with the upcoming, with the next set that's coming out at the end of the month, they're going to kind of start releasing them for brand new heroes. And the idea is that you're going to be able to buy this and you're going to be able to play with it for a while. So Aurora comes out. She's already got quite a few Living Legend points, and she only continues to get better as other like powerful heroes leave the format and themselves get retired. So suddenly she is already considered basically the best deck in the format. It's this growing thing that people are realizing she's probably the best hero right now. And she gets an Armory deck, and it has new cards, some of which aren't necessarily like super great for her, like they're fine, but there's like one card in particular that is printed specifically for her. It's a spec, it's a specialization, which means only she can run it. Only a hero named Aurora can run it. And it was actually misprinted. It was misprinted to, I won't get into the weeds on this, but basically there was a slip up, and part of the card that should have been optional and something you had to like choose between this or that was accidentally made just free and given, and you didn't have to specifically choose that and give up something else potentially. And that card and some other stuff push her even harder. So all of this kind of swarms together and creates a situation where Aurora gets an Armory deck, an onboarding product for new players, and she goes to Living Legend 2 months later, and people were not happy about that. That was considered that it was a big talk of the town within the community of how did this happen? This should not happen again. And much of the empathy is with the new players, because genuinely when that deck came out, I would have said to someone, oh, you want to get into the game? Do you kind of like a sort of maybe faster, more aggressive playstyle? Just get the Aurora deck. She's very good and really easy to play. There are a number of people who bought that deck. They're brand new to the game, or God, even, you know, let's say you bought it a month later. You know nothing about the game, and you're like, oh, someone recommended this deck. It seems really good. You know, a review from a month ago. You buy the deck, and then 2 weeks later, it's illegal to play at your local armory. your local game store at their Armory Night, which is what our weeklies are called. Very bad feel. Very bad feel. For, the competitive players, you kind of expect that. They're more able to see the writing on the wall and plan around it. But the new players got really screwed over on that. And the stores, it probably wasn't very fun for the stores who ordered stock and suddenly can't sell it. So they made multiple... they made a whole podcast talking about the Living Legend system with the lead designer and the owner of the company. And they were like, this cannot happen again. We're going to make some change. Because obviously one of the takes that gets put out there in this whole discussion is the Living Legend system shouldn't exist. Take it out, it's bad. They said, we believe in it and it just needs work. And I'm probably on their side. I think it's interesting and it's worth seeing where it goes over the long term. The game's only been out for 5 years, and it's a long-term system. I think it's worth investing in and trying to tool it up to make it better. It's obviously not so bad that it's destroyed the game so far. So I really do think there's something there. And just today, literally just today, they released a big article going over some new bans. They do a ban list every, let's say, 2 months that are typically the ban list is meant to hit, it's targeted at specific heroes to slow down their Living Legend point gain. So for instance, one of the other Rosetta heroes, Florian, who's my boy, love Florian, has suddenly become very strong in the meta because people discovered there was a new OTK strategy with him. Previously, he actually had a better win rate than Aurora, but that was mainly due to him being less represented than her and also being more difficult to play and also extremely flexible. So some strategies on him are just better than others, So suddenly this OTK strategy gets found out, and they're definitely trying to hit that because they do not want Florian to also go. I don't want him to go. I love Florian. I think he's really fun and cool. And I don't like playing the OTK deck. I want to play the fun defensive ramp deck and then throw 1,000 rune chants at my opponent. That's fun to me. And within that, they announced the first changes. I don't know if they've made other changes to Living Legend, to the system before, but they announced changes including multipliers. So for the first year of a hero's lifespan, LL point allocation is halved. There's a 0.5 multiplier on it. It is half the usual. The second year, it's normal. It's at 1x, and then anything beyond that is 1.5. So the idea is a hero is very unlikely to go to Living Legend within the first year of their release. Maybe, and assuming they're not, I would think a year with those numbers would be for an extremely busted outlier. And to their credit, for the most part, outside of Aurora, the last couple sets have been quite balanced. They've been quite it's a pretty open field at the moment. I call it a mid-tier meta, if that makes sense. The power level's gone down to I think a pretty nice environment. I don't know if High Seas is gonna fuck that up, but and then the longer a hero is around, the faster they will then rotate. So it is kind of timing based, but also there are many heroes who've been out for 5 years, from the launch of the game, who even with the 1.5 multiplier probably aren't going to go that fast. They also announced that they said that they are going to be, you can tell how badly this whole incident fucked them up, because there is a Living Legend format where, every hero is legal, and it's basically run by 2 or 3 heroes. But they said that they plan on Living Legend being highly important to the game going forward. The LL format. Which I think is to alleviate these issues even more. In fact, so much so that the upcoming Pro Tour, or Pro Quest, whatever they call it, is going to have a Living Legend tournament. So they're like really leaning into it. They do not. I don't know. I imagine that someone's gonna come up with a fan format that's like Living Legend, but they have like a couple bans on heroes. I think at some point we're gonna have that situation, but up to now, they're trying to make it a little less painful. So, I think that's a very interesting. Like I haven't heard of a system like this being tried anywhere else. It's running into problems, like unique problems that could not have been planned for otherwise. And we are seeing in real time how you make a system like this work. So I think it's an interesting study in balance and game design, like this kind of meta systems design. Could you imagine if something like that was implemented in like a video game, for instance? People might be upset by that, depending on how you implement it. Well, that's the thing, is that for Fab, if a hero goes to Living Legend, you can still use, like, the cards aren't gone. If the cards were exclusive to them, they're kind of like dormant for a while. This is how they sort of soft rotate things in and out. They go dormant for a while, but they said they're going to release another Aurora literally May 2026. They put a date on it, which was May 2025 is when she went to LL. So they were, yeah, when I say that these things have like a 1 year turnaround time, that was definitely like, fuck, hit the button. So they're just going to print another Aurora, who will probably be another Lightning Runeblade, and then you'll be able to use all your Lightning Runeblade cards again. So your collection goes in and out of rotation, depending on who's legal in the format. But all of those can come back at any time. So that's another interesting kind of part of the seesaw effect. Anyway, I want to talk about another thing. Speaking of the new player experience, the AT&T Annihilator Cup. Now, I've talked about this before. I think a year ago when they did the last. Think it was the last one. I don't remember if I talked about. I swear I talked about one of these. So the AT&T Annihilator Cup is this thing where it's like a publicity marketing thing, using very popular streamers. So the idea is it is a multi-week tournament. It's like every 2 weeks. There's a tournament for a different game. They pick 5 or 6 games, popular competitive titles that are out at the moment. And they get all of these streamers together. They put them on teams with captains and all that. And then they play in a tournament for a different game every week or 2, I think. I want to say it's 2 weeks. One of those games has, since they started doing it, has always been a fighting game. It's usually just Street Fighter, I think. They did one with Street Fighter V. That was the last one I remember. That was very funny. And Street Fighter VI was the fighting game this year. Weirdly enough, they never seem to get an actual fighting game streamer in these events. They get, like, they have Apex as a tournament, and they get, like, pro Apex players on it. They do it with other games. No fighting game actual players represented, which I find a little odd. If you're going to include a fighting game, there's quite a few popular fighting game streamers that you could have picked. But that also leads to this situation where you get to see in real time brand new players learn a fighting game. Many of them for the first time. There's a couple experienced fighting game players. They always get Double Lift. He's actually pretty good. Another guy, Jake and Bake. Those two are like actually have quite a bit of fighting game experience, and I believe some tournament experience, and they kind of clean house every time they do one of these Annihilator Cups. But a lot of people have never really touched one seriously. And also interesting is they're learning it in the worst possible environment, being they have a Twitch chat room with 10,000 people in it. I think that any chat room over like 1,000 people maybe becomes essentially useless. It becomes essentially unreadable, and I don't look at the chat for almost any stream. Sometimes just to gauge like the relative emotional response that people are having to what's going on. But for the most part, I do not look at the Twitch chat if I'm watching any, or a YouTube chat. If I'm watching any live stream, I do not look at the chat if there's over a certain amount of people typing at once, because it's just total nonsense. And also, rando Twitch chatters are the worst source of information ever. There has to be this thing when you become a big streamer where you develop some sort of like genome in your system that like being a streamer has to like predispose you to some medical condition where you're able to look at a wall of people giving you the right information and then your eyes happen to magnetize to the one person saying total garbage, the complete wrong advice, and going, oh, okay, do that, and then fucking up. So there were two people whose progress I was watching out of curiosity, those being Tyler1 and Ludwig. You may have heard of them. Both come from like League of Legends. Ludwig also has like a Smash Brothers background in commentary. And actually, no, Ludwig does not play League of Legends. He's like a Smash guy, and he transitioned to being like a general streamer. And I think that they're a very interesting... It's a very interesting contrast between two different styles of people. Tyler1 is known for being a rage lord and screaming. But he's actually he has an incredible aptitude for picking up games. I believe he became a top 0.5% chess player after a few months because he quit League and was like, fuck it, I hate this game, I'm gonna go play chess. And he has kind of similar achievements in a couple other games. He picks up games very fast and very well. And fighting games are interesting because for most people, they tend to be a years-long journey. I thought what was fascinating about watching his gameplay of going from like nothing, starting from absolute zero, was how quickly he picked up the fundamentals of Street Fighter. Part of that had to do with the fact that he was playing Modern. He played Modern Ken for basically the whole time. And it only serves to reinforce what has been often said but rarely believed in the fighting game community, which is that you really don't need a lot to climb, to win and climb. People make it much more complicated than it has to be. If you're starting a fighting game, if you have no experience, you need like 3, maybe 4 things to know about once you find a character who you kind of enjoy for whatever reason. That's the other thing, is finding a character is difficult, and the truth is that if you're just starting out, you have to learn what you respond to. You have to develop a taste, essentially. And at the beginning, you don't have that, so you should just play whatever. Play whatever, I say. You kind of just got to figure it out on your own, usually through trial and error, and you will figure out, like, do I prefer visual character design or gameplay mechanics more? Maybe there's I always play a character who has this kind of move. Maybe I always play a character who dresses like this. Maybe I play a character because I like the way they look, or maybe I play a character because they're very top tier or something. You just kind of have to figure out how much of that you prefer. I'm ultimately a gameplay guy, but the aesthetics of a character do matter to me, you know? It's a gradient scale. You can decide your character by totally arbitrary means. So once you kind of figure out, once you've played a number of games and a number of characters, you can kind of figure out, okay, this feels like it becomes much easier to identify a character that you'll like. So he picked Modern Ken. I don't know why. Maybe it's because Ken is extremely strong in Street Fighter 6. Maybe it's because he liked him. Maybe it's because people told him that Ken was an easy beginner character. He also played on Modern, which I think was a great idea. Probably because people told him that it was the easiest to pick up. And if you just want to win, you can focus on... I was talking about the three things. So once you pick your character... Right, I got sidetracked. Okay. You need some kind of a poke, some kind of a move that has, like, whatever your longest range move is, preferably one that is relatively quick, you know? Not just, like, your biggest, heaviest attack, but also one that is kind of quick and not super easy for the opponent to predict. Number 2, you need one move to anti-air. Some kind of a crouching heavy, or maybe a standing button, or maybe even a special move, but some kind of an anti-air button. And then the third is just like a short little combo that you can do consistently. It can be normal, special. So many combos in Street Fighter 6 are like normal, special. And if you want to get fancy, like normal, EX special, and then another special to follow up. Just something that is conceptually simple and that you can guarantee that whenever you have an opening, that you can like do this very simple combo to get some damage out. And genuinely, that's all you need. Those are like the basic tools you need to learn. You don't have to learn 100 combos. You don't have to learn frame data. You don't have to learn all the different hitbox, hurtbox interactions. You just need to be able to control space and do a little combo to do damage. And then that's like your starting point. That is like that's for even like top players and experienced players. They do that when they're picking up a new character, because that forms the foundation of your game plan. And then all that changes is that you start creating more and more complex layered game plans as you understand more of the character and what you need and like what's useful in the game, the particular game. But you can start out with the basics, and Tyler understands the basics. He has his stand medium punch. He has DP, which he can do like instantly with modern mode to punish jumps. And he has the modern mode auto combo that he can go to off of a single hit. And that's all he needs to get to like platinum. Just like he learns almost nothing about the game. I don't think he understands frame data. He rarely uses lights. Sometimes he jumps and does like jump in. He doesn't understand how to use drive rush. He knows drive impact. He learns that. But for the most part, it's the simplest possible tools. And then from there, it's just playing with patience and learning how to defend when an opponent tries to rush you down and how to kind of fight your way out of that situation. And you know, like the basic rules of the game, blocking lows and overheads. And then you do that. You play patient and then get a hit and run your shit. And that's like the whole, that turns out at its simplest level, that's like the whole game. On the total opposite end, you have Ludwig. Ludwig decided that he was going to play classic Honda. And you might think, oh, Honda, yeah, scrub killer. He picks Honda, funny enough, just because he likes sumo wrestling. He thinks sumo is cool. And he goes with classic because of ego. This is very funny. Despite Tyler being known for being a huge rager, he surprisingly approaches the game with very little ego. He flames the fuck out of his opponents, and he just blocks people if he doesn't like how they play. And he one and dones like shit. Like he one and dones fucking everyone. Which is very funny enough. I find people who don't play fighting games are much more prone to one and done. They don't run the whole set. When I would play multiverses with Kat, she would just we would lose the first match of a set and she would want to back out. And I was like, no, you finish the set. You have to run it back. What are you talking about? She's like, oh, but they won. I'm like, no, it doesn't matter. You play the set out. One and dunning someone is considered kind of rude. If I run into someone on ladder and I win and they quit and they don't play the next set, I'm like, bitch. And if they win and then they quit, you're also a bitch. I'm not gonna lie. You're a bitch. You're scared. You're scared that your fucking gimmicky shit will not last more than one game, and you're bad. I'm convinced that you won, but I'm convinced you're a worse player because given one more opportunity, you don't even trust yourself to win if I get one more opportunity to respond to your gimmicky bullshit. And I know that it's not a connection problem for me because I use Ethernet, bitch. It's reasonable to one and done somebody if the connection's bad. I've done that many times before. Trust me. I played a lot of Street Fighter V. At a certain point, I just started blacklisting people. I just started thank God you can block people because I am not getting matched with the Mexican Wi-Fi Ken. There are so many of them. Right? This is like etiquettes. This is like community etiquette stuff, but he doesn't understand that. I was talking about like ego and stuff like that. So the funniest thing is that's the way that he approaches the game. Like that's how he plays it. But he has a very good learning mindset and very little ego. He does complain, like he says lows are overpowered, which is very funny. But like he still works, like you can see, like he's complaining, but you can see him like actually changing the way that he plays over time. He's just venting in the moment, right? Then you look at Ludwig, and Ludwig is so stubborn. He wants to learn classic, and he wants to learn it on stick, specifically stick, which is so funny. When he comes from like a Smash and like PC gaming background, I would think that you would go to either controller, like pad, or leverless or keyboard. Fuck it. From that, like I started on keyboard because I've been a PC gamer for forever, and so then I went to leverless controller. That's not how Schwarzenegger would say it. A leverless. I thought I sounded like Arnold Schwarzenegger there for a second, so I was trying to think of how he would say leverless with no R. I went to a leverless because that was the natural progression from a keyboard. Can you hear my neighbor's kids screaming? Okay, I want to leave the window open because it's a little hot, so you'll just have to put up with that. Anyway, but no, he starts on stick, and it's because he wants to play it for real because that's the legit way to play it, and he wants some kind of like respect, which I think is funny because like the conversation's basically over. No one really cares if you play on leverless nowadays. It's just kind of standard. If you want to play stick, that's cool. More people will probably say that playing at stick is handicapping yourself. But it's people don't really get uppity about controller choice these days unless you're like literally using it to cheat. Like he could have bought like a, what is it, the Hot 42, whatever they call it. He could have bought a snack box. He could have, I don't know, been like me and build his own leverless controller, or just like use a PlayStation pad or something. No, he goes stick. And he is like his own worst enemy. He's running into all of these issues where he wants to learn the big drive rush combo. And he wants to learn all this stuff. And his execution literally just isn't there. And if he was in it for the long haul, then like fine. Most people probably in 6 are going to eventually convert to classic. Over time, because they want access to more of their moveset. They want the freedom to be more precise. They want the damage increase, because Modern does nerf your damage. But he is running into, like, I would say normal beginner fighting game stuff, where it's like he's focusing too much on combos. He's going for the combos. He's dropping them. He's getting mad. He's fucking up his inputs. You know, he can't do the charge move when he wants to. He's jumping a lot. He just has like weird habits. He just has weird habits. And he's like overthinking it. And he's getting so mad. And he's doing these scrimmages against like one of his teammates, right? Who is playing Modern Zangief. And it goes about as well as you would expect. He gets absolutely destroyed. Because Modern Zangief is block and walk. To block and walk in, jump in every now and again, get in, get a knockdown, and then 50-50 them to death. And just do grappler mind games. One button SPD. Woo-ha. And he's getting blown up by the simplest strategy that he just cannot figure out. And he's not able to like isolate Honda to just his strongest options that are actual genuine scrub killers. And he's getting so mad. He gets so angry. He is like steaming the whole time. He is so salty. He's not taking it well. And there was an interesting reaction by Street Fighter Pro trademarked, Brian F., commenting on one of these clips of Ludwig. And I think he eventually like gave him a coaching session. Because Ludwig... Basically, Brian identified something I think is very true, which is that fighting games are very good at hurting your ego. You will find few genres that will absolutely like make you understand how bad you are as quickly as fighting games. Like you look at other stuff, like one of the things people always talk about, oh, your teammates in League of Legends or something, or Counter-Strike. One of the things that alleviates bad feelings in those games at a beginner level is that League of Legends games take 30 to 40 minutes. And a lot of that is spent with downtime, and you can easily just farm minions or something. Basically, for a new player who is maybe a little worried about getting totally stomped, there is a lot of downtime in League where you are not actively getting shit on. Even if it's a total stomp from the enemy team, that feeling of losing is paced out over like a 30 to 40 minute game. Now, for an experienced player, this becomes fucking infuriating because you realize that the game is basically unwinnable now and you're going to be stuck there. But as a new player, you're like, you're just focusing on yourself. And you're like, well, okay, I've got like, takes like 30 seconds to walk back to lane after I die. And that's time that I kind of have to like formulate a little plan and think about what's going on. And maybe, the laning experience, there's other stuff to focus on, It's not always just a bloodbath of you both trying to kill each other. A lot of it is just killing minions and stuff and just farming gold and experience. There's a lot of time that you're not getting your ass kicked. In a fighting game, a round is going to last, on average, maybe a minute at longest. Very few rounds are going to go to time. And if someone's better than you, you're going to know very quickly. And you're going to lose even faster, like 40 seconds. You're going to lose in like 40 seconds, 30 seconds, something like that. If you get absolutely rolled. Then you play another round and it can go the exact same way. And within 2 minutes, you lose. And like, you can spend 40 minutes playing one game of League of Legends, or you could play 50 matches of a fighting game. And despite the fact that your win record will be the exact same, you can lose every single fighting game match. And you can lose that 40-minute league game. But the fighting game session is going to be, it's going to feel like so many blows to your ego, one after the other, whereas the league one is just one, like, ugh. And it's a little easier to kind of pick yourself up if you're a newcomer. Now, granted, I'd say it's maybe not the most common to jump into a fighting game and lose 50 matches in a row. I've played games like that. Plus R is a game. It's my favorite fighting game ever. That's a game where you play 30 games in a row and you don't you don't win a single one. You don't get a second in that game. And it's a wonderful game. It's a beautiful game. But for a new player, it might that experience is a little intimidating to some people. Fighting games are very good at bruising your ego because they will tell you exactly how bad you are. There's no one else to blame. There's no downtime. It's just an immediate test of skill from beginning to end of your session. And some people just don't take it very well, right? Some people can't respond. Like, I have a friend who has literally told us, it's one of my friends from the card shop, and we're all out eating dinner after an armory night. And one of my other friends is also a fighting game nerd, and we're talking about it. And a friend of ours told us that he cannot play fighting games because he cannot control his emotions. He cannot, and he's a pretty level-headed guy. He's a pretty level-headed guy. But when he plays fighters, he gets so fucking... He told us he literally, like, broke a controller. Because he got so mad playing whatever. And so his conclusion is, I just should not play fighting games. Which I think is, like, a reasonable adult thing to do. You know? It's a genre that he just cannot handle on an emotional level. And you could be very mature in every other aspect of your life, but something about video games and fighting games in particular just nail you on that. Sometimes they will just hit you on a particular spot that is unmanageable. And maybe someone like Ludwig is like that. And you know, the funniest thing is I actually watched his tournament run in the eventual competition, and he did very well. He went like 6-2. You know, that's a very good performance. It's a beginner tournament, although, you know, there were some more experienced players in it, but that was a very good performance. And yeah, it turns out eventually he kind of got the memo of, at a basic part of your game plan, like once you sort of more understand your character and all that, is just start off the game doing your most difficult to deal with, like your bluntest options, your most brutish options. You're playing Honda. Headbutt, butt slam, occasionally do medium punch. Just do that. And at a low level, when you're playing on like the first level of mind games or whatever, right? Players don't know how to deal with it. And you can just run that over and over again. And it's simple. And you have this urge to be like, but I want to do something more complicated. I want to do something more respectable. But no, that's the fact. Literally, even like top level players start out every match by doing the basic brute force option. That's like how everyone plays fighting games. The difference as you go up and up in skill level is that people figure out how to deal with it. You do something until someone proves that they can stop you, and then you move on to more and more layers, you know? Like when I played Testament in Strive, you start out and you just do your basic zoning game plan with all your pokes and your projectiles, And then they learn that they prove to you that they can avoid the crow. Because getting hit with the crow or blocking the crow puts the debuff on them, the stain state, and then any attack that I make against them is going to pop it, and it's going to keep them in block stun, which is going to let me set up even more and just keep my zoning going for longer. And God forbid they actually get hit, because that's a big combo starter then with the stain pop explosion thing. So then they prove to you that they can avoid the crow. And you're like, okay, so I'm going to use the alternate firing method. Is that what I really want to call it for the crow? As instead of sending it to the one specific marked location, I'm going to send like the default straight ahead. And they're going to try to jump over it. And then I'm going to hit them because I shot it high. And then they get hit by the crow. And now there's like a 50-50 game where they have to kind of figure out what I'm going to play. And now we're on the next level of offense, right? And then you go and go and go, and you adapt back and forth the longer that the set goes on. That's how everything goes. But it always starts out with running the most basic, like, cycle flowchart of like 3 options. Everyone is running a flowchart. It's just that when you get better, you have to force people to get further into the flowchart. But if Ludwig's issue was that he was, excuse me, he had this ego thing of like, but I want to do the respectable fighting game. I want to do the dance, the way everyone talks about fighting games at a high level. And it's like, no, dude, just fucking stop. You're in here to win. It's a very interesting, I always love watching new players pick up fighting games. And especially knowing like what backgrounds they come from. I love playing fighting games with Prox because he has some experience and playing fighters, and just seeing like what he gravitates towards and what he's able to do and what he's able to pick up is really interesting. And you can see like improvement in someone over the course of like one session. It's a lot of fun. I like watching that. The Annihilator Cup is another interesting live case example. In fact, it's only made harder for them because of Twitch chat. God damn. There was another one when they did the one for Street Fighter V. I remember you could tell the rude awakening that multiple people were going to get in that tournament because of how many of them picked up Luke. Because you could tell that they just looked up Street Fighter V tier list and they saw Luke as the uncontested best character in the game. And they were like, cool, I'll play Luke. And then did not realize that Luke is strong because he's like an incredible all-rounder. He's amazing in that game because he just does everything very well, but on like a basic foundational Street Fighter like fun, he excels at every aspect of Street Fighter fundamentals. So if your fundamental skills are bad, they're he's like a non-starter. You should just pick Han. Oh my god, what the fuck? I just got a DM from that friend I was talking about. I will read it. I will expose our DMs. Because I think I asked him as a joke, what the hell is an honest E-Honda? And he had a response to me. I just had a guy raging at me after a battle hub set. But the thing he was mad at was the following. Honda's command throw doesn't have enough whiff recovery. You know the Honda's honest if that's the thing being mauled about. He plays the honest Honda. He's the world's last honest E-Honda player. What a funny particular thing to be mad about. Anyway, I want to move on to a news story that has captivated me. And it's kind of come out of nowhere and surprised me how interesting I find it. And that is about Marathon. So Marathon, Bungie's original FPS, sci-fi FPS series that they did before getting snatched up by Microsoft in the late 90s to make Halo as a launch title for the Xbox. Marathon is not, For the longest time, it was pretty obscure despite being a Bungie game, and most of that comes down to the fact that it was a Mac game. Yep, it's hashtag Mac gaming, baby. I guess Microsoft saw potential in them, and that's why they scooped them up. So Marathon has been this old Bungie IP. Some people swear by it. I actually own all the classic games because they are or were free on Steam or something, so I might get around to them at some point. But Bungie has been planning on getting a Marathon reboot out the door. They've wanted to reboot the Marathon franchise as kind of their next thing. It's something that's established, sort of, that they can bring back. And basically, because they're Bungie, they get to do the, like, no one knows what Marathon is, but they get to do the, oh, Bungie's they've got a new shooter series. They got a new shooter out, and it's a reboot of one of their original old classics before Halo that, like, was what the building blocks of what Halo became. And that's kind of an interesting proposition to a lot of people. I personally have never been a huge Bungie fan. I've played, I think, a few hours of Halo 3 Forge at a friend's house in middle school, and I think I played a few hours of Destiny because a friend gave it to us. I think around the time it came out on PlayStation, something like that. I played a few hours of it out of curiosity. Never quite clicked for me. But I have obviously been familiar with it and the havoc that Destiny has wreaked on my beloved games industry. So Marathon gets announced, and it's kind of been cooking for a while. It is an extraction shooter, which immediately makes me less interested. I do not really care about extraction shooters. Haven't necessarily played one, but the idea isn't that interesting to me. I was a little curious about Tarkov. I have some friends who play Tarkov. They go back and forth on it. I hear mixed things. It sounds like a game that is interesting but quite infuriating. There, as far as I know, isn't like a free-to-play option. Maybe there is for any extraction shooter that's out. Also, there's like two. There's Tarkov and I think The Hunt Showdown, or isn't there like a cowboy one? I'm not sure. There's like a Frontiers setting one, something like that. I haven't checked them out, but I'm not terribly interested in the concept. The trailer came out for Marathon, and I'll be honest, also did not look that interesting to me. It's sort of, I got the impression, okay. I don't want to be, let's see. I don't want to be a doomer, but I have historically had a bit of a dud sense. Maybe like I don't really buy into hype that much. I've kind of been able to identify when certain games or things in the past are kind of gonna flop. When I was like 10, I was like, the Ouya's probably gonna fail. So I was like, who would buy that? I don't know anyone who would buy that. I don't want to be like I'm like the psychic medium, but I do have like a bit of a, I don't know. I think I have a pretty good nose for when something's, the dud alert, the dud alarm, the whiff. And I kind of got those vibes off of Marathon. It looked fairly generic in many regards. I didn't see the appeal of what it was doing that was so different or so excellent that people were going to suddenly jump to it. When talking about this situation, a lot of people will say things like, a very common adage is that, like, what the heck is the name? Tarkov players are only like, they don't like extraction shooters. They like Tarkov, It's very hard to win people over from that, from within the genre. It's kind of like a similar problem that MMOs have. The one thing that people really liked from the game, the thing that everyone talked about was, damn, the art style is really cool. And I'm also going to be honest, I was not super hot on the art style. When people talk about the art style, a lot of what they talk about is how cool the menus and some of the like aesthetics of, say, like texturing on, company in-universe company logos and stuff like that. That stuff has a very strong transition animations, strong visual identity. It's very rooted in like the 90s Designers Republic sort of aesthetic. This, what do they call it? Acid, like techno acid graphic design, something like that. The Wipeout series was a big, highly influenced by Designers Republic, that kind of thing, right? Personally, I found that the actual like in-game environment and rendering, kind of a similar problem I had with Stellar Blade's art style, which was, I feel like this stuff would look a lot cooler in concept art, but when you render it with like realistic textures and shading and lighting and stuff, it looks kind of blah to me. It looks sort of generic, and the highly stylized Designers Republic style graphic design almost clashes with it, and it felt a little discordant to me. But a lot of people really liked it, and they pinned it as the one thing the game's got going for it, was they thought it looked cool, the fashion, the design, some of the character designs. But gameplay wise, I have not heard very good things about it. Well, the rumor come out. Does the Bungie Marathon is plagiarized? Yes. Turns out a significant portion of not just Marathon's art style, but literal in-game assets are directly plagiarized from an online artist / maybe artist collective. It was a little difficult to find information about them, named Antireal. You can find them on Blue Sky. I'll have them linked below. Antireal is an artist who, I mean, you can go click on their profile. They do this sort of Designers Republic acid graphic design stuff. The sort of techno, lots of futuristic, lots of geometric shapes, very flat. Flat designs, very barcodes and little numbers and stuff. This sort of cross of industrial, big flat colors, and it's a cool art style, the Wipeout thing, and very similar to Marathon's. In fact, you could say, perhaps they could have inspired Marathon's art style. Well, they released this post saying that they had identified so many instances of Marathon's art team directly lifting her work, that like she uploaded this and people started finding more. They started finding more work directly plagiarized. This has been a problem with Bungie in the past, which I find crazy, because you don't get a lot of, maybe it's just that Bungie's the only one that people report on, but you don't get a lot of plagiarism accusations in gaming. Even with AAA stuff, even with other big companies who might outsource some amount of their art. Bungie has had this happen like 5 times. I discovered, there was like 2 that I knew of, and I discovered more from the past, from like Destiny, that I did not know about, from instances where some, like, an entire visual, like, frame for a Destiny cutscene that was being told in this, like, 2D, like, exposition style was directly plagiarized from an artist's, like, solo piece. It looked, the original, if you put them side by side, the original artist piece looks like a high-quality storyboard for the Destiny cutscene. It is shameless, absolutely shameless. I have never heard of this happening so consistently with any company, of them just blatantly stealing other people's stuff. With this case, with the anti-real stuff, dude, her name is on some of the textures. Literally, like, one of the ones that no, it was one of the additional ones that people found. Like, her personal brand logo is still in there. Her name, Antireal, is like hastily, poorly scrubbed out. Like, you can still see it. You can still read Antireal. Insane. Absolutely shameless. Again, shameless. And then you find out the game's art director follows her on Twitter. You literally can't make this shit up. It is such a blatant case of, look, I don't know if he was the one who stole it. They claimed it was a former employee. It could have been that he decided on the art direction for the game, inspired by artists like her, like Antireal, and then dropped some examples to the team of, hey, here's what we're going for. And some artist, I'll put in quotes, artist, decided that it would be easier out of stupidity or just malice to plagiarize, to just directly steal it. That could have been a thing. It could have been, hey, here's what we're inspired by, and then someone took it and just did it. They just ripped it off. It could have been that he put it there himself. We don't know. But as the art director, he is ultimately responsible for what happens, right? He's ultimately responsible for what happens there. He has, I went and looked at his credits on Moby, and he has also been kind of the on and off art director, I think, for some expansions. Like, he's there for some and then not others. I don't know if he was the art director when they, for instance, plagiarized, like I said, entire art pieces for cutscenes or skins for guns, or other instances where they plagiarize stuff. But you would think at this point that there would be some kind of methodology in place when you have identified that this is a problem, it kind of unique to your company, to prevent stuff like this from happening in the future. So this is the game is supposed to come out in like 6 months. Everyone who's played it says that it is not 6 months ready. I have literally heard stories of people falling asleep while playing it. It has a ton of problems that people have identified, such as being forced group content. The whole game is you are forced into a group. And because it's an extraction shooter, you have progress that carries over. And if your group sucks ass, which, dude, do I have to keep going back to the Dissidia video where I talked about I brought up the Team Fortress 2 interview where they specifically designed that game to reduce how reliant you were on randoms from the internet, just from matchmaking? I feel like that's the most important lesson anyone designing an online game could ever learn. It's either that or Lessons from Habitat. Go read Lessons from Habitat. That's an oldie. From basically the first MMO. So the game has these... also, it's based on, like... It has, like, hero... It has, like, hero powers. It's a hero-based system. So you pick characters who have different skill sets. And I am not familiar enough with the extraction shooter genre to say this myself, but I have seen a lot of people who are more knowledgeable and do actually play these games say that this creates a ton of problems. I won't go super into detail, but suffice to say, people have issues with the way the game is laid out. It's supposed to come out in 6 months, and it needs serious overhauls and a lot of work done on it. There was an article that just came out, like today as I'm recording this. This is on thegamepost.com, courtesy of Zuhad Ali. Ex-Bungie dev says Marathon leadership was, quote, extremely toxic and humiliating to work with. Quote, Bungie leadership needs to be gutted completely. Wait, what was this? Wait, when did this come out? Did I miss this? Okay, 2 days ago. Bungie scraps marathon marketing and pre-order plans. Open beta may shift to, quote, roadmap of public playtests. Oh, God. Oh, it's getting worse. And this article is basically about how morale... It's the latest follow-up in a sequence of stories about how the plagiarism controversy has been a major blow to internal morale at the company. People are just not feeling good about the situation. A former employee said that they had worked on Marathon and that they dropped this quote about how it was toxic and humiliating's crazy. And about how the leadership needs to be completely replaced. Last year, after the studio laid off more employees, he said he left Bungie because, quote, their leadership is the worst I have worked with. He describes rampant micromanagement, frequent toxicity, and violations of their core values, and no ability to execute on their multi-franchise vision. Every day was a fight for autonomy and trust. Every day someone telling me I'm not allowed to speak on any issue or problem in a professional tone. It was on our minds since the last layoffs in October 2023. We asked Pete, the company leader, and his response was that it was a lever he'd pull again. They need to flush out leadership completely. My team was excellent, but it felt like everything else prevented us from doing anything meaningful. He also pointed out that repeated layoffs have only pushed the studio to rely more on contractors and even AI, making things even more difficult for the full-time staff. Quote, so when I hear that they laid off another round of my talented colleagues and friends, I feel angry. They're not at fault. They're not the ones who need to be canned, and every round only strengthens their reliance on contractors and AI. No joke. Other Bungie staff have publicly criticized leadership in recent months, notably Liana Rupert, Bungie's former community manager, also called out leaders with issues with leadership after getting laid off in October 2023, further adding to the chorus of voices calling for major changes at the top. So then I saw on Reddit this article. Someone posted this article from 2024 about Marathon. Specifically, this came after they replaced the director. Everything's going wrong with this. This game is just fucking cursed. Director. Oh, this is before the layoffs happened. Fear of layoffs. This is from an article from March of last year. And there is this paragraph in it that was very eye-opening to me and actually clued me in on something that I was not aware of. If you'll recall, Bungie was bought by Sony, bought by PlayStation recently, like a year or two ago. Because Bungie historically has been like, we're going to make our own thing, and they just fucking cannot make enough money, and their leadership is such a clusterfuck that they cannot be sustainable on their own. So they have had to sell out to Sony. Sony, I know, is pissed about how they've handled Destiny. And essentially, Bungie has been in a state of trying to prove that they can stay afloat, and Sony just desperately wants to basically just liquidate them and absorb them into like probably other parts of the company. I'll be real. I imagine that in 2 years' time, Bungie is not I'm calling it. Bungie will probably not exist anymore, and all these people are going to be working at different places. Hopefully within Sony. I think they just hate the leadership at Bungie, and they want to get the talent they have on anything else. Literally anything else. So, there's a quote here. Within the company, there is a growing expectation that senior company leadership will leave in droves in the summer of 2026. about a year from the day I record this, when the final payouts from Sony's acquisition of the company take effect. With this in mind, there is a strong push to get Marathon out the door before then, and let whoever takes the reins after that, be it Sony or Bungie, worry about how it's sustained. And now everything clicked into place for me. Marathon is getting blood to'd. It's getting blood to the chosen dead. If you don't recall, or you don't remember me whining endlessly about this and mourning this, Blood from 1997, it's one of my favorite games of all time. I think it's one of the best shooters of the 90s. Was published, developed by Monolith Software, which is not the one that makes the RPGs. Developed by Monolith, I think it's software. There's another one, Monolith Productions, or Monolith. It's developed by a Monolith. Not to be confused with the RPG Monolith. And published by GT Interactive. GTI, who also published Doom. So, in the early 2000s, GTI worked out a deal to be bought out by Atari. Atari was going to, and it was going to be one of these, kind of rolling ownership ones where it's going to take place around a certain date, and they're going to be kind of ramping up their ownership and all that as time goes on. A gradual buyout sort of thing. So, or was it? There was a date when GTI was going to fully be owned by Atari. So GTI leadership gets together and they go, oh no. So right now, all the money flows up to us. But when we got bought out by Atari, the money's going to flow up to them. So we've got to make as much possible now in the next 2 years before we get completely bought out. So Jace Hall, I believe, goes to a regular checkpoint meeting with GTI, and it's a regular okay, the game's at this point. In order to finish it, we need this much money and this much time. And then GT goes, all right, you're publishing, we're releasing it now. We're launching the game right now. And they were like, what? No, it's not done. They said, no, we're putting it out now. So Blood 2, The Chosen, is an absolutely unfinished, practically alpha build of the game. It genuinely needed a year more work at least to be in a finished state. It came out, it was so bad, it basically sunk the franchise to today. Plus, also, Atari is a terrible company and they don't do anything with their properties or whatever. They just sit on their properties for forever. That is what's happening with Marathon right now. I did not know that the deal that Bungie had worked out with Sony was this kind of gradual rolling thing. I believe essentially what happened was, essentially the deal was Bungie leadership gets, whatever the value is in the buyout, but it's not delivered to them all at once. In order to finish up their certain projects or whatever, they probably gave them basically the sum that they were owed, but in the form of what I guess would essentially be a bonus. A bonus to their paychecks for the next, 3-4 years. And once those are done, they're like, there is no reason to stay at this company. We basically cashed out. We're going to leave. So we need to get, just like with Blood 2, we need to get Marathon out the fucking door before 2026. Out the door. By the end of the year. So we can wrap everything up and then jump ship. And I feel really bad for the people working on this game. because they have effectively been saddled with a leadership that apparently is already incompetent and is now actively does not care about the quality of the game and is just trying to get it out. So whoever picks up the mantle afterwards is going to have to deal with the consequences of their leadership as it is these assholes. And it is it's a big mess. This game is cursed, and I do not envy the people who have to clean up after this mess. The plagiarism thing, I wouldn't even be surprised if it was someone on the art team saying, fuck it, I don't care, and just plagiarizing because they have no respect for the project or the people they plagiarized from. I felt this all got really surreal when they did a scheduled live stream of the game showing off, previewing the game, and they put the art director on camera and let him sit there, and the image is surreal. The image is, he's just sitting there. He looks like there's no soul inside. He looks like the light's been stamped out of his eyes. The chat is spamming. There's a phrase from Marathon called, there's like a rogue AI, and it says, "Escape will make me God." And the chat is spamming, "Plagiarism will make me God." And he's just staring at it. He looks so... I feel bad for him. This is like genuinely fucked up and humiliating. They should not have put him on this stream. Like, consequences, sure. But like, this is weird. When this guy, this ex-staffer, said the staff was that leadership was humiliating, I kind of see what he means now. This feels like uncalled for. It brought to mind literally the screenshots from when the U.S. Army had their own Twitch channel, and you just got these incredible screenshots of this poor sap that they got to live stream on it, just staring at the chat in silence as it spams World of War crimes over and over again. You know what's amazing about that story? They would ban people from their chat who were trolling, and then Twitch, the company, ruled that they could not do that due to free speech laws because it was technically a government platform. And back when Trump was, during Trump's first term, he would block people on Twitter. And that was very controversial because it's a public official blocking his own constituents from communicating with him on a public platform. And it was ruled by the Supreme Court that he was not allowed to do that. That was against the First Amendment. And that applies to every government representative, institution or individual. You cannot block people on social media. What a hilarious story. What's not hilarious is the guy looking like he's fucking dying on stream. That's a little depressing. I do not have high hopes for Marathon. My heart is with the developers who are shackled to this goddamn thing. I hope that when Bungie inevitably goes under, they will be able to find jobs somewhere else. And that's it for Marathon. I labeled this in my notes, the Marathon Oof. Now, finally, I want to give some impressions on a game that I started just spur of the moment. I was like, you know what? I played the first two Lego Batman games. Let me play the third one, I love the Lego Batman games. I have a lot of fondness for the first game. I think the second game, I believe I called the second game good, but a little, what was the word I use? a little jumbled, a little disconnected. Kind of feels like the ideas themselves, the ideas within that game are good, but they don't necessarily mesh in a way that is very seamless feeling. It's a bit of a choppy experience, although the individual parts are good. Namely, the open world versus the mission structure, it felt like they didn't know how to cleanly integrate these things together. It was the first game where I believe it was the first game where they did an open world. And the funny thing was that, the missions themselves were pretty good classic Lego game levels. And then the open world I thought was a lot of fun. There was a lot of cool stuff to find. There were collectibles absolutely everywhere. And I liked finding collectibles. So it was not, I didn't think of it as busy work. I like collecting stuff in Lego games. Doing that stuff was fun. Exploring all these little nooks and crannies within the world was cool. Lots of tiny little details that were a lot of just very amusing, an amusing, fun world to roam around in. And as you unlocked more characters, it got, in my opinion, even better. But this, I see how it made sense to them on paper, where they were like, you're going to have this big open Gotham City free roam environment, and then different locations around the world are going to be where the missions take place. And you're going to then load into a discrete level. It just felt a little, in execution, I thought it was a little jarring. I felt very confused because they were not, it was like, in that game, it was like you would go through, you start off doing a mission, like 1 or 2 instanced missions, right? And then you're dumped into the open world, and I was like, wait, what? What is this? Is this a part of the game? What do I do? But you were not incentivized to explore the open world at all. It was just, go here next, go to the next closed off mission area. And it felt like the game wanted me to just kind of put my blinders up and follow the breadcrumb trail to the next mission start point. And I found that kind of weird. And I ended up just doing all the missions first and then exploring the world and completing it in that order. And again, both of those experiences were pretty good, but it felt like some ideas were not fully... didn't mesh all the way. Lego Batman 3, couple hours into it, has a similar problem, but in a different way. That makes sense. So, okay, so my problem with the game so far is that it just kind of feels like it's doing too much. That's my impression. It just feels like it's doing a little too much. The experience is, you start out and you go through like 4 or 5 levels, back to back to back. No hub world in between, no open world thing in between, back to back to back levels, which was kind of weird to me because I didn't feel like I knew what was going on. You play Lego Star Wars. They start you out in the cantina, I believe. They start you out in the hub world, and then you get to choose. You kind of understand. You roam around, and then you can choose to go to the first level, right? You understand how much of the game there is to unlock or whatever, and you're like, cool, I'll just start at the beginning now. Same thing with Lego Batman 1. And then then in between each level, you go back to the hub world, and it kind of makes them feel integrated. Lego Batman 2 kind of broke from that, and I found that a little discordant, a little dissonant. Lego Batman 3 is like, you're going to go through 5 levels, and I'm like, is there a hub world? I don't know what's going on. Like, there wasn't like a natural stopping point in between for that same reason. I just kind of played all these levels back to back, and it kind of felt like, I know I probably could have just stopped because there's save points throughout, but I don't know. It didn't have those natural stopping points that the previous games have. And these are just little pacing things, but it felt a little long in the tooth. then suddenly you find out that there is a hub world. Not just one, but like 3 or something. So it's this whole story where it's like a Batman game, but it's really a Justice League game. And you have this whole 5-level setup to then be like, you're in the Justice League watchtower up in space. And I said, okay, cool. This is the new hub area, I guess. But there are portals. There are like 3 different portals. One to the Batcave and one to the Hall of Justice. And these are like full-on environments. Big environments that have duplicate rooms for the same purposes. Like, they all have trophy, or the Batcave also has a trophy room. The same way that the Hall of the Watchtower does. I don't know if the Hall of Justice is weird because there isn't like that kind of similar, like in the hub worlds. Typically what you'll have is the mission select area, maybe a shop to buy things, a trophy room for stuff that you've collected. There might be 1 or 2 depending on how many collectible types there are. And that tends to kind of be it. That sort of tends to be it. And you can kind of understand, you can wrap your mind around the way that everything is structured. But it's like, okay, so the Watchtower has like a bunch of rooms, and I don't understand the purpose of half of them. There's a trophy room in there. I don't know if these are just here to be here. There's also content to do inside of them. Like, I have to unlock characters to basically bypass certain areas. And then I go to like the Batcave, and the Batcave has its own trophy room, which I don't even remember if it's like a different type of thing. And it's got another room that is specifically for keeping track of how many Adam Wests you've saved. Adam West is a collectible in this game. There is just a collectible that you'll get, like an indicator at the end of every level that says Adam West in peril. And if you happen to save him, there's like a little Adam West you can save, and he voices himself. Rest in peace. Conan O'Brien is there for some reason. He is just standing in every hub world and is just like, yep, I'm Conan O'Brien. And, you know, I like Conan. I was just like, what? What is going on? I feel like I'm playing this game and I don't know what's going on. The Hall of Justice has all of these collectibles to find, and then there's like a sewer grate or something you can go down, and underneath is an entire area that doesn't even look like it's underground. It's just a jungle, and there's the Hall of Doom or something, and it's like the evil Hall of Justice, and there are like a couple collectibles, and Gilbert Gottfried is down there as Mr. Mixidalip, whatever, and you do like 3 missions for him in like this one room, and Lobo shows up and you fight Lobo and you like unlock them. It's so weird. Like, I don't understand what's going on. Maybe I just have a tiny little pea brain, but I just cannot understand what the structure of the game is. But eventually, like, the hub areas, except the Hall of Justice for some reason, which has nothing in it as far as I can tell, besides stuff to collect. The other ones have, like, terminals that you can go to select levels. It's just really strange. It feels like it's doing way too much, and I am overwhelmed, and I don't understand what's going on. The gameplay, for the most part, has been fine. It's just the way it's all framed and like the structure it fits into is really jarring. I don't know how many times I can say, I just don't understand what's going on. Maybe as I play more, I will have a better understanding and it'll make more sense to me, but for the moment I am I don't quite understand. I don't really know what they're going for. maybe a little bit too much. Like maybe they got a little too big for their britches. But we'll see. We will see. And like 3 of the characters at least have multiple forms. Like that was a whole thing in the previous games, right? Is that Batman and Robin each had multiple different suits to kind of offset the fact that you're playing as the same 2 characters the whole time. They had different suits that gave them different mechanics to play with and solve puzzles with. And those were always accessed via little points. You would it would have the costume for the alternate suit and you jump into it to switch. Now it's been changed to once you unlock it, you can just pull up a radial menu. But there's at least, it's Batman, Robin, and Cyborg all have multiple forms, and they just toss a ton of them at you all at once. And there's so many characters with so many different abilities, and I can see why they did all this stuff. It's just very overwhelming. It's just a lot. But yes, perhaps it will get better over time. And I think with that, I'm gonna bring this to a close. I've been talking for about an hour 40. Again, if you have a question for me, you can, thank you for listening. If you have a question, you can leave it down in the comments below, but please phrase it in the form of a question because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. I have been Tygan. The video is underway. It should be out by the end of the month. I think it's going to be cool and fun and might disgust you a little bit. You can support me on Patreon. I also have a Ko-fi linked down below. All my sources are linked down below, as always. And I have nothing else to say. Bye.